And hey everyone, welcome back to another show of 100 Ways to Build Pipeline in 2025. Today we have a special guest with us. His name is Brent Holloway. He's a big inspiration for me as well as a lot of things we do at Boomerang. A little bit about him. He was the VP sales at Talent for 7 years, which is a rare event where most sales leaders stick around for a few years. He's there for 7+ years. He saw them get a really good exit. We can unpack that a little bit. After that, he worked for the legendary CEO Jyoti Bansal from the App Dynamics story, and now he runs his own SaaS sales advisory, and actually coming out of that is also an interesting software product. Welcome, Brent. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shankar. Good to be with you.
Very cool. Maybe a good place to start is, if you can briefly talk a little bit about your journey. You started on the front line selling, and you've seen it all. Very few salespeople get to see what you've seen. So I would love to learn a little bit about your background and your story there.
You bet. And coincidentally, I'm at Santa Barbara right now. My daughter's checking out UC Santa Barbara, where I graduated 29 years ago, and with a biology degree of all things. I didn't really know what I was going to do. But after graduating, I go back to the Bay Area, and I was very fortunate to know Bob Carr, who was an angel investor in Blue Pumpkin Software. And he said, Brent, if you're going to be in the Bay Area, and he knew a bit about me. He just thought I would do well in sales. He said, you got to go work for a startup and get some equity and get some great experience. And so I was really grateful for that. I had a 7-year run with Blue Pumpkin Software. I learned a lot about selling. I was in the Palo Alto office at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, just, hitting the phones and doing BDR work. And then was fortunate to get my first AE opportunity about a year later, and then several years as a rep and as a channel manager, and then 20 years in sales leadership. So I've always enjoyed working for the startups and the scale ups, with the exception of a 3-year run at HP in the enterprise security products group. That was a 3-year run with obviously a large company. But other than that, it was mostly startups and scale ups, one IPO, and as you referenced, one private equity exit in 2021.
Very cool.
That's mostly been my career. Now here I am building my own little business. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm advising companies and building, as you referenced briefly, a software solution of our own. It's a sales productivity, analytics, and ideal customer profile platform. Early stage.
Very cool, man. Congrats on to your daughter on UC Santa Barbara. Hopefully that goes well.
Thank you. For full disclosure, she's waitlisted. It is so tough these days. Like, I got into UC Santa Barbara with like a 3.3. She literally has a 4.3 and she's waitlisted. So,
Oh my God,
the bar is very high these days.
very different. Very different. Very cool. Maybe we can dive a little bit into some interesting stories. I know when we were preparing for this call, you mentioned a little bit about some of the interesting journey while you're at Talent or at as well as at Harness, right? I think talk to us a little bit about what was it like working as a sales leader for 7+ years. Some of the highs, some of the lows. What's different today than what it was back in the day?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, Talent was great. It was mostly up and to the right. It's never perfectly linear, of course. We had times when we grew faster than at other times. But I feel like at the start of every year, the challenge was, all right, we need to roughly double sales, but we didn't have the luxury of doubling the sales team. So we had to figure out ways to grow efficiently. And so I was fortunate to work with some really, really great sales operations people who helped us dive into the data and figure out what were the scenarios where you got the highest return on your time. That could be analytics by company size, other attributes, the growth rate of the business, the industry, and other factors. So mostly up and to the right, but there were times when we grew too fast, frankly. We did have a substantial riff about year 4 into that 7-year journey. And then it took probably another 18 to 24 months just to get back to where we were at the previous point. So there were some, even though we were very data driven, I mean, Talent is a data driven business, but you make your best guess, your best plan. And sometimes it doesn't work out according to plan. So you have to make some adjustments, but again, very fortunate. I went from 5 reps to 52 reps in my org. So frontline manager.
Brilliant.
And we added some managers, of course, along the way, and hired some really great managers who started off as frontline leaders and became second line leaders. And so, during that 7-year period, I think my group went from about 2 million to 70 million in ARR, while the business went from 35-ish to about 250, and then sold for 2.4 billion to Thoma Bravo. So it was, roughly a 10x revenue exit at the end of that run there. So it was great.
Very cool. And you were also part of the committee that led an acquisition, right? That's a unique experience. Not many sales leaders I know had that. What was
Yeah,
interesting about that?
yeah. That was a really interesting experience. I was part of the due diligence team. A company called Stitch Data was an acquisition that Talon made along the way. What's interesting about a couple of interesting things about that acquisition. One is you could argue to some degree that it was less feature had fewer features than our free version of Talent Open Studio. So why would somebody pay for something that doesn't do as much as the free version of Talon? And the answer was really simplicity. Stitch did an excellent job of having a really elegant, easy to use interface, pre-built connection. So, and it was a relatively low cost option. But I thought that was pretty interesting that they served part of the market that our robust free product didn't address very well. So yeah, we paid a substantial sum for this business, and frankly, that was part of the reason why I'm excited about building my own business. I saw the outcomes that some of the people there achieved, and but good on them, right? They built a really great product in a relatively short period of time. But yeah, it was really interesting to be a part of the due diligence team. As you might imagine, there was a lot of financial analytics and modeling, and trying to extrapolate from small and how is this thing going to triple triple double double double. Even back then we didn't use that term, but it was something like that in terms of the growth expectations. And yeah, it was a great experience. Really enjoyed it. And then, as you referenced, after that, I got to work for about 2 years with Harness in San Francisco. That was a great experience. I mean, really innovative, disruptive company with aggressive growth plans, building out a robust DevSecOps platform, and I think they've got a bright future ahead of them. So I learned a lot there as well.
Very cool. And Brent, maybe switching gears a little bit here. I think obviously the main topic today is everyone that we speak to, irrespective of whether you are early stage, mid stage, scale up, or pre IPO, post IPO. One of the biggest topics is how do I generate more qualified pipeline? And while there is a lot of noise around AI and what AI can do, I think you spoke about some of the tactical things that you did at Harness to uncover new pipeline opportunities, right? So I think before we move into what AI can do, it'll be good to sort of understand some of the practical examples that you've seen work, where obviously what have you seen work for in your past experience?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always this challenge of growing fast, and then I would say over the last few years, doing it while also growing efficiently is like this added pressure, added constraint that we have to be concerned with. And I'd say what worked well for my teams is we would always take a data driven approach to unit economics in order to achieve an outcome of, let's call it $600,000 per year for a mid-market or a SMB AE to achieve their goal. What are the unit economics? Like, how many opportunities do they need to work at what win rate, at what average sales price, over what period of time? Those are the four key elements that you really need to analyze. And what I see a lot of companies, and my own teams included, it's sometimes, we'd be on forecast calls, and a rep would be talking about all the things they're doing in this custom POV for an $8,000 deal. And they only have 4 or 5 other opportunities in their pipeline. And you're thinking, there's just no way the math doesn't, play out. And some people get it intuitively. In other cases, you have to kind of show it in black and white. And you need to say, let's just walk through a quick example here. If an AE can work 20 opportunities at any given time, and let's say it's a sales led motion, it's got a 2-week POV, that's typically part of the process, but 20 opportunities at a 25% win rate. So you're winning 1 out of 4, you win 5 deals. And let's say it takes you 2 months on average to get a win. If the average sales price is only $10,000, you're getting, there's not enough juice for the squeeze, right? You're getting 50 grand every 2 months. That's 300 grand a year. That's probably half of that rep's target. So I think when you go through that exercise, that's the foundation of making sure you're doing pipeline gen. Are you pointed in the right direction? Am I chasing the types of opportunities? Am I outbounding where I'm going to get the opportunities that are going to give me enough juice for the squeeze? Well, that takes more analytics, right? You need to then do a regression and say, well, what were the scenarios? What were the characteristics of what good looks like? What were the company sizes? What were the industries? And were there other factors? So everything I've been talking about now, I've been doing for 15 plus years of doing basic analytics that you can do in a spreadsheet or lots of pivot tables. It can get pretty dicey, but there's some core math there that you can do to make sure that you're running efficient sales cycles. That's SMB, mid-market, enterprise, and so on. If I may, now you referenced AI. You okay to transition into an AI use case?
No, absolutely. Maybe another example, Brent, as you do that, is obviously a lot of large companies talk about expansions. So if you can also reference some interesting learnings you've had, like what are companies doing incorrectly, right? And that'll be good to understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. On average, expansion, cross-selling, upselling, those are more efficient sales cycles than the new logo selling. But of course, you want to run a balanced business and have both. I was fortunate in my 3 years at HP, we had a sales ops team that did deep analytics on like the right upsell, cross-sell plays to run at the right time. The enterprise security products group was basically 3 acquisitions that they had made, and they were complementary, and they called them Moneyball plays based on the Major League Baseball, the analyst that would figure out what were the right KPIs to measure that got the most efficient outcomes for every dollar spent. And so the same concept applied there. We were very data driven in terms of the sales plays that we would run for the best outcomes. And yeah, upselling, cross-selling, on average, nothing new here, right? But typically more efficient sales cycles.
Very cool. And maybe just one thing I'll add to that. One of the things that we see quite a lot is the concept of buying centers, right? And everyone thinks they know who they are selling to, but it becomes incredibly difficult to actually visualize if your reps are actually selling to those people, right? Let me give an example. Like one of our customers is a cybersecurity market leader, probably the next whiz out there in terms of growth rate and revenue. They get most of their new revenue from upsells and cross sells. And I mean, when we looked at the actual data, and to your Moneyball analogy, upsells are obviously easy because you're selling more of the same product to the same buyer. But how to think through cross sell plays can be very tricky, because you could, in theory, sell a different product to the same buyer, which obviously is a net new sales cycle. But you can also sell to different buying centers. It could be based on geography, based on business lines. A lot of times at a strategy level, companies do a really good job of saying, here is how we have the different plays that we need to run in terms of cross sell plays or upsell plays. But then the moment you go to the nuts and bolts, is my rep A and SDRA pod executing on the same play consistently across all the book of business? Are they targeting the right buyers? Are they targeting the right seniority? Are they sending the right messaging? Are they referencing the right case studies? A lot of the detailing is where systems fail. And again, this is where AI can do a fantastic job, because a lot of these things about doing the boring things, repeatably finding the right buyers, repeatably tagging the right outcomes, the right processes, guiding the reps the right way. And in ideal world, you have your smartest manager overseeing every rep every single hour. And again, if AI can be taught what does best practice plays looks like, it can do the same thing repeatably over and over. That's an example we've seen work really really well for one of our customers in terms of expansions. Talk to us a little bit about your story. What have you seen work in terms of AI use cases, maybe to get this conversation going?
Yeah, so one of the more recent examples was taking something that was previously a very manual process and then leveraging AI to get to the outcomes much, much faster. So the example was, it was relatively easy for us to analyze our sales efficiency based on the number of employees that the prospects had. And what we typically found was when they had fewer than 100 employees, oftentimes there wasn't enough juice for the squeeze. Like the deal sizes were too small relative to the effort to produce a quota achievement. So that was one relatively easy one. Then we did industry analysis where we could find certain industries perform better than others. And then a hypothesis was, does the growth rate of the business that we're selling to matter? And to find out, literally tens of hours in LinkedIn, because you need to know what was the growth rate leading up to the winner, the loss date. And so a lot of manual lookups, putting it into a spreadsheet, and then correlating that back to the outcomes. And what we found was it was very impactful. It was very meaningful. We had more efficient sales cycles when the company was growing. And then specifically, if the company was growing at least 10%, then again, we had faster sales cycles, higher win rates, and bigger deals. So it was a really great insight, but it was very painful to get to. And that was just for my relatively small part of the broader business. To do that across the entire business, it would have taken, a team of analysts. It would have been hundreds of hours of work just for that one signal, if you want to call it a signal, an ICP signal. Well, now, and I use a tool called Persona to do this. It's very similar to Clay, for those that are familiar with that. It's an AI tool where you upload just the list of the company names and the close date. It doesn't even matter if it was won or lost in terms of what you upload into Persona. It will tell you what was the growth rate of the business leading up to that date. So what took me tens of hours, I can now do in a matter of minutes, and you could extrapolate that from there. And that's just one use case, right? Like that's just one. You can do the same for many other criteria that might be very meaningful to studying your ICP and your sales efficiency. I feel like the use cases are limitless. That's just one I really enjoy because I felt the pain of doing it manually, and I'm now enjoying the benefit of having automation from AI. What else do you see in terms of use cases.
Yeah, I mean, I like to call them as agents, right? And again, I think the example you gave is a fantastic example, because if you talk to any sales leader that has a strategy mindset, they will want to unpack these insights so that they're getting their teams to focus on the right steps, the right outcomes, right? And lacking which, obviously sales can get desperate, they can go all over the place, and you need to drive focus. What agents can do is the ability for us to take a question and find answers and find solutions, which used to take hours or days or weeks, in many cases can be done in a matter of minutes. And it is just ridiculous to even think about many of these use cases, right? For example, one of the agents that we deploy for our customers is everyone tracks when their customers change jobs, and that's, in my opinion, commodity, like, even though we are in that space. But the real power of an agent is to tell the rep what's the best way to approach this person, right? And what our agents does in the background is it goes and scans through everyone's calendar data, CRM data, email data, to uncover the key nuggets of information, like who was a primary executive stakeholder who has a relationship with this person. Maybe, you know what, she may have a text relationship with this person, and they may be able to text and book a meeting. And you are also going in with the leverage, right? You're not trying to be salesy, you're trying to be taking an executive sponsor with you on the first meeting. And you can very easily spot a job change on LinkedIn, right? But then the spotting a job change is part of the, it's just this trigger, right? But again, how do you act on that is where agents can do. We see hundreds of such use cases where, based on any trigger, in terms of how companies are already monitoring those triggers, how do you take the trigger and get that to an outcome? That's where I think AI, or as we call it, agents, can do a really, really good job. And a question for you, Brent, again, just, you are obviously, after you exited Harness, you started off as a consulting company, if I may, and now you are on the path to becoming a product company. Talk to us a little bit about that. What's the journey like, and the key insights there?
Yeah. I'm definitely I'm going for it. My only other attempt at entrepreneurship was about almost 20 years ago. I nearly set a record for the slowest MBA of all time at Santa Clara University. It took me 5 years. I was doing one class a quarter, working grinding startup hours, right? So I really milked it. But we thought, as we did a lot of weekend projects, shouldn't there be an eBay of spreadsheets? And so one of my classmates and I, we started this little business called spreadsheetmarketplace.com. And we ran it for a couple of years as a side gig, but we're talking like 5 to 10 hours a week. We had 4,000 customers, which looks really nice on the Google Analytics map, like all over the world, 4,000 customers. Here's the problem: at an average sales price of between $10 and $15, not $10 to $15,000, $10 to $15, right? So it was like, it was really small potatoes in terms of revenue, but thankfully we didn't lose money doing it either. It was small. Anyway, in the back of my mind, over the next 20 years, I really enjoyed the work that I did, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking, like, maybe I can try something again, and this time really, really go for it. And so now I have an opportunity to go all in on this and see if I can build something. So yeah, it's a little scary at times, but it's more fun than scary, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do with it. So thank you for asking.
Very cool. And you had an interesting term for this. Is not a SaaS company. You're calling it something else. Sir, the inverse of it, right? So can you speak on that as well?
Yeah, so SWAS. I learned this term actually not even that long ago, but software with a service. I guess you could argue all software companies have a services option, but what I'm finding is our platform. It's relatively easy to use. It uses a Tableau interface as the user interface, but a lot of times the companies that I'm working with, the CROs, the CEOs, the co-founders, they want some expertise. They want me to apply my experience to the data to help them internalize it and figure out what to do with it, because there's a lot of options. So the phrase that's been brought up a few times is, can you net it out for me? And that's, I think, where the services comes in. It's like, okay, well, let me net out for you the key insights from all of this data and all of these reports. So yeah, I'm gonna provide what we have as a license. I'll do it as a assessment one time basis, or a combination of both. I'm gonna serve it up the way that the market wants to consume it. But I do like the term software with a service.
Very cool. Now, can you talk a little bit about what are you seeing in the market, right? Like, especially with the companies you work with, as well as the sales leaders you talk to, right? What are you seeing AI do for sales teams, especially around pipeline or productivity? What are some of the things that you observed?
Yeah. Well, so the first trend that I'm seeing is more towards efficient growth and just growth at all costs. Probably, nothing new there for most listeners, but you see that, and it's a part of every like strategic planning discussion. A million use cases for AI. I mean, I'm really impressed at what seems to be coming out, both in terms of increasing the productivity of BDRs, of AEs. I'm also really impressed by what I've seen in terms of AI coaching. Like I've seen some coaching apps where you can interact with it. I mean, just it's like the value of a sales manager almost when he or she may not be available. So let me tie that back to efficiency. As companies are trying to be more efficient, they may have changed from a manager to rep ratio of 4 or 5 to 1. Now maybe they're 8, 9, or 10 to 1, right? So they have less time. And I think some of these AI tools for coaching give the rep the ability to get some self-coaching ad hoc when they want it. And these AI tools are really impressive in terms of, like, I'll give you an example. We feed gong call transcripts into it, and we'll ask it to evaluate it from the perspective of a sales manager. And I think it's complementary. I don't think it replaces the sales manager, but it's really good. And the reps can do it as much as they want. And many times I feel like it's more insightful than what I would have come up with, but again, it's complementary. So unlimited use cases for both automating. I'm a little concerned though about the automation part of it. Like I hope it doesn't create, email to be even more of a spam cannon than it already is, but at least it can probably help produce some more tailored messaging that may resonate to improve response rates. But I do think there's a lot of interesting developments in terms of pipeline gen and coaching that it can do a lot of good
Yeah,
for our salespeople.
yeah.
What do you think? I'll ask you the same question.
No, totally. Totally, man. It's interesting you brought up AI coaching. I'll give an example, right? Like we obviously work with a lot of demand generation, revenue operations, sales leadership teams, and these personas are notorious for making a lot of calls, but by themselves they never pick calls, right? So it's kind of you want your customers to pick your calls, but you will not pick the calls when someone calls you. But then what's interesting is when we do connect to someone, the expectation in terms of the quality of conversation is very very high, right? And I always wonder, we've got like a 2 member sales team, when they do the hard work of making calls, right, and they are full stack reps, but how do we make sure they are having the best messaging when they have the conversation? Am I the best way to tell them what to say? Are they going to learn by making mistakes, and so on? Here's where I discovered a tool called I think it's called Hyperbound. And if you test it out, if not tried it, you could pretty much go there without logging in, do a cold call role play live with
Yep.
a AI marketing ops persona, right? And it is incredibly accurate, right? And I come from a sales enablement background. I used to be a rep in a company called Mindtickle, and there we sold sales coaching as a big use case. And it used to take customers 1, 2, 3 weeks to put together a program, right? And here I'm looking at this tool. You don't need to put together a program. Your reps can deal with the fire on day one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like an example outside of what we saw. Like, even in the world that we operate in, what AI or agents can do more broadly is things that used to take several hours a day, or at least several hours a week for reps, which is who are the people they should prospect, who are the people they should, how should they prospect, how should they make calls, and also on the other end, once they get an opportunity, right, how do they make sure they should do the multi-threading correctly, how should they do multi-threading? There is so much that AI can do more proactively for the reps. And I mean, we all say it's going to take away jobs. In some sense, it may, but in many ways, it is going to provide air cover to salespeople like it's never been possible. Things that we want to keep routinely coach the reps on multiple times every single time. Those are things that, at least I think, AI agents are going to provide air cover from every single side possible for salespeople. That's incredibly exciting, especially if you're doing good in sales, if you love the art of sales. There are tools that are going to make you get closer and closer to making it into a science.
Yep. I agree. Great examples there. On the one about the voice agent, there's one from Connect and Sell. I think it's currently free still, but it will ask you, do you want me to be easy, medium, or difficult? And then you can kind of like ratchet up the difficulty of the role play as you get more experience. So it's incredible how accurate it is, how tough it can be if you want it to be tough. It's really great for training.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit here, and we can talk a little bit about uh, more tactically, what are you seeing, in terms of pipeline generation? Like, you work closely with a number of customers, and obviously, I'm sure you talk to sales leaders. And again, what I hear from reps, and we talk to reps across industries, reps that sell to cybersecurity, sell to legal, sell to finance, business ops, etc. everyone says no one picks up calls, no one wants to take meetings. The scrutiny on opportunities are a lot higher. There is always a super app that claims to do what you're doing, right? No matter, you may say you're a tool, someone else a platform. You talk to the platform company, they will say they're a tool, someone else is a platform. It's a perpetual cycle, right? So I'm just curious again, what are you seeing work, especially for early to mid stage, or even for with the companies that you work closely with?
The fundamentals still work. Yes, email response rates are lower, but they're not zero. Some people do pick up the phone. And I think when you have a multi-touch, multi-channel approach, it still works. I'm really impressed at what came out of outreach on this topic. Sam Nelson, the guy with blue hair that's done a lot of Sasser type talks on the web. So he came up with this sequence called a goji. And I know there's a lot of different flavors of a goji out there, but the key takeaway from a goji was ensuring that you don't give up too soon on your leads, right? Like the research shows that most reps don't make enough attempts and they don't respond fast enough, and therefore they don't get the optimized yield in terms of the pipeline that can come out. When you follow an Agoge style process, AGOGE, you're ensuring that you're making enough temps, multi-touch, multi-channel as well. So you're LinkedIn, email, and phone calls. And I think when companies try that approach, they'll see a higher yields. I mean, my clients, their BDRs are making calls, they're doing all these things, and it works. So if I hear someone say, "Oh, no one ever picks up the phone anymore," I think that's an exaggeration. That's not true.
Very cool. Very cool. And again, it's interesting you say that, right? And I think what, we obviously operate in the pipeline acceleration, pipeline generation space. What we've seen our customers do incredibly well is at a leadership level, pipeline is a top three priority, right? Like if you go back 5 years, pipeline is a second order priority. Like you go to a board meeting, people talk about commit and what's coming, what's going to come in, and where they need help. But uh, there is a lot more strategic focus on pipeline at an executive level. I'll give you an example, right? Like one of the customers we work with, they have a two-member SDR team that works closely with the CEO and the LPs with some of their investors. Crazy, right? I mean, think about this 25-year-old, SDRs who typically just pick up the phone, make 100 calls in a day, and hopefully someone picks up to book a meeting. They're working with some of the most senior people to unlock their network,
Yeah,
right?
smart.
Another example I'll give is this customer of ours. They're like a 2 billion ARR business, right? And the CEO of the company wants to know if any of their top 150 customers has had a key executive depart or a key executive being hired, right? And we try to understand, hey, why do you care, right? Like you obviously have your chain of command, and there's a whole lineage of people that works with the top accounts. But what we've seen is the best companies have become incredibly good at making pipeline a strategic priority, right? And they're changing the entire playbook from just being cold outbound to uh, you know I call this Rolodex in the age of AI, right? And I think there's a fundamental new approach that, again, it's a little more tougher if you're early stage. You have to find ways to go around that. But if you've gotten to a certain stage, 20, 30, 40, 50 million, or ideally larger than that, you build so much Rolodex around you that you use the right AI tools to extract what you can use to drive more pipeline. That's been some interesting observations, Brent, that we've seen, that our customers do.
It makes sense. I mean, it's such a great use case for AI because I can go to LinkedIn and I can see that I might have, 14 or 50 mutual connections with somebody, but I don't know the strength of the relationship. So I'm kind of winging it if I go to those 14 or 50 people to find out who would be the right connection for me. So yeah, having a tool, I know Boomerang is a provider in this area that can help me be more strategic in terms of who I go engage with. Makes a lot of sense. On your question or your point about LPs, I'm a small LP in Stage 2 Capital, and they too sometimes will try to leverage those LP relationships to get to the right person and make introductions, and we're happy to do that. So, I love the process of leveraging the right person, the right connection at the right time that has the right level of relationship. It's a game changer.
Very cool, man. I know we're almost coming to the end of a really good discussion. I have a bunch of notes here that I've taken away to share with my team. Any closing thoughts, Brent, on your end that you want, in terms of takeaways for the
No,
team?
I love the conversation we had. I think we have a lot of similar viewpoints and complementary solutions in the marketplace. And I encourage companies to take a data-driven approach to who are you going after in the first place? Like, why am I going after these industries or these company sizes or these use cases, whatever it is? Be data-driven in terms of who you focus on. so that you create the right type of pipeline. And then from there, that's the science, well, the initial science part of the equation. From there, it's like, well, who specifically do I go after? And it's probably a buying committee, as you mentioned. So really understanding all the key players that you want to engage with, and then whenever possible, getting warm introduction, so it's not cold. So I think it's very complimentary, and love what you guys are doing in the space, and hope to stay connected and let's grow together. Thank you so much for the time.
No, thank you so much for the great insights, Brent, and good luck with the college hunting, and have a great time at Santa Barbara. And let's stay in touch. And thank you everyone for those who attended. And we'll send the recording out shortly in the next day or so. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, we can exit here, Brent, and we can connect offline. I'll send you a Zoom link.
Thank you.